Good afternoon, and welcome to the Entrepreneurship 101 for Early Career Engineering Professionals. We'd like to acknowledge and thank Ingersoll Rand for their generous support of this webinar. We'd like to welcome those of you participating who are not currently members of the Society of Women Engineers, or SWE. SWE is more than 23,000 members strong today and includes both collegiate and professional members across many sections and regions. SWE's value is delivered through its strong communities, conferences and seminars, our networking and mentoring opportunities, national recognition programs, and K-12 outreach education. For additional information on the Society, feel free to visit our website at www.swe.org. Alaina G. Levine is an award-winning entrepreneur, contributor to National Geographic, science journalist, science and engineering careers consultant, professional speaker, and corporate comedian. Her new book on networking strategies for scientists and engineers will be published by Wiley in 2014. She is president of Quantum Success Solutions, a career consulting enterprise with a focus on advancing the professional development enterprise of the scientists and engineers, and she has been given over 500 workshops in the U.S. and around Europe. She is also the author of over 100 articles pertaining to science and engineering, science, careers, and business in such publications as Science, Scientific American, and Physics Today. Previously, as an Eller Entrepreneurial Scholar, she directed the Professional Science Masters in Applied Science and Business programs and taught entrepreneurship to science and engineering graduate students at the University of Arizona. Among her many honors, she was named the Rising Star Entrepreneur of the Year for the National Association of Women Business Owners in Tucson chapter and the Tucson Leader of the Year in honor of previously bestowed upon former U.S. Surgeon General Richard Kimona. Elena, the floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank SWE again for their wonderful support and sponsorship of these types of workshops and webinars. So I'm Alaina G. Levine, president of Quantum Success Solutions, and it's my delight today to talk to you about one of my favorite topics, which is entrepreneurship for, in particular, early career engineering professionals. Fact is that you as an engineer actually have a lot of skills that actually prime you perfectly to launch an entrepreneurial career or to engage in intrapreneurial activities within your organization that you already have, or to engage in innovative thinking and problem solving in the organization in which you join as well. So you have all three options for you as your career. So our plan for today is I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the skills needed to be an entrepreneur, the transition from engineer to entrepreneur, the role of innovation, and the elements of an entrepreneurial venture. And since many of you, or all of you, have access to this recording on SWE's website as well as the handouts, a lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about today, there's going to be so much to discuss. When we talk about entrepreneurship, there's just so much to discuss, so I'm going to be giving you the option to be able to see a lot more than what I'm even going to be talking about today. So I wanted to be clear about that. So let me again begin by offering you congratulations. You have the advantage if you want to go into entrepreneurship. And I always like to think about it this way. When I was at the University of Arizona and I taught a graduate course in entrepreneurship specifically for science and engineering graduate students, I often gave them this analogy. Right in the middle of campus at the University of Arizona is a main street called Speedway Boulevard. And on one side of Speedway Boulevard is the business college, the College of Management, the College of Business, and the entrepreneurial program. On the other side of Speedway are the engineering buildings and the science buildings. And I always used to say that as an engineer, you have the ease and the ability, the natural ability, in fact, to be able to physically and analogically walk across Speedway and become an entrepreneur. In other words, you can go and become a business person and be very successful in it. But do you think that a business person, somebody who only studied marketing, for example, could easily cross the street and become an electrical engineer? Could they easily become a chemical engineer? The answer is, of course, no, they wouldn't easily be able to do that. They don't have the fundamental problem-solving skills, and they also don't have the technical background. Now, what I'm saying is that because you are studied engineering and because you are successful in engineering and because you love engineering so much, which I'm going to get more to in a bit, you actually have an advantage because you can metaphorically and physically cross the street and become an entrepreneur because the skills that you have gained by studying engineering and by pursuing it as a career directly apply to an entrepreneurial venture and to an entrepreneurial career. And part of that is because you as the engineer are the value creators in society. If you think about it, scientists and engineers are the people who actually come up with the knowledge and come up with the innovative solutions to problems in society. It's the business people that are able to commercialize that. And if you're the ones who create the value, that means that you hold a lot more power and you hold a lot more cards in terms of what direction you want to go with your career. And if you choose to go into entrepreneurial endeavors, you have that ability. So you as an engineer can be successful both in entrepreneurship, in business, and in engineering, which is very exciting when you think about it. Now, entrepreneurship, as you know, is inherently linked to innovation. But I don't have to tell you, having studied engineering, that engineering, it's required, if you're going to be successful in your engineering career, you absolutely have to be a successful innovator. In other words, you have to be constantly looking for new ways to solve your engineering and science problems. You can't not do that. If you didn't, your career would stymie. You would also become unproductive, and you may end up out on the street. But that's not you. You are an engineering goddess. And you know that as an engineering goddess, or god, for those of you that are joining us that are of that variety, you know that innovation is part of the mindset of the engineer. And so since you have this innovative mindset, constantly looking for new ways to solve problems, constantly looking for new opportunities, this innovative mindset is required for an engineering career. It's required for an entrepreneur. That means that it can help you with your engineering innovation, which means that it can help you design and craft for yourself truly triumphant and blissful engineering careers, both in the engineering space, where you're actually doing engineering and scientific problem solving, as well as in the business space, where you're taking your engineering, innovation, problem-solving abilities and translating them into business problems. So let's talk a little bit about who is an entrepreneur. And this comes from a fabulous book, and I'll be able to give you the reference at the end of this webinar as well, but it's down there at the bottom. Abrams, she wrote this great book called Passion to Profit. Who is the successful engineer? The successful engineer is a person who is driven to victory. Nothing is going to stop you. The eye is always on the ball. You always are looking to solve the problem. You are a self-starter. You are a go-getter. You think beyond the realm of possibilities, and you think in multi-dimensions, too. You see opportunities where others see problems. You see opportunities where others are stymied and stop and start crying and crawl in a ball on the floor and become hysterical. That's not you. You see opportunities for expansion, for growth, for innovation, for new solutions. That's an entrepreneur. You control your own destiny and you're responsible for your own work. You're willing to give up the safety net and the benefits of a regular paycheck and job. You're a change agent and you're flexible, and you understand you have to make a profit. Now, you noticed on this slide, I said you. Now, many of you, I know all of you are engineering gods and goddesses. Not all of you are necessarily entrepreneurial gods and goddesses yet. But I was saying you because this slide, which Abrams describes as the characteristics of an entrepreneur, are all characteristics of engineering gods and goddesses. Correct me if I'm wrong. I know this for a fact, and you know this too. So here we are again. We have all of these skills. We have all of the characteristics of an entrepreneur naturally by studying engineering. So exciting. But we have to understand a little bit more about business if we are going to become an entrepreneur and either launch our own company, think entrepreneurially within our own organization, or work for a startup or an early stage business. So first of all, I think it's important to say that the purpose of any business is to make money. If you are not selling something, it is a hobby. It is art. It is not something that's a business. So every business has to make money. But how you do this by providing value. And the value that you provide can be characterized in three different ways. You're solving problems, right? Those are usually the products or the services that you're providing. You're cutting costs. So you're constantly looking within your organization, how can I cut costs, and you're increasing sales. And that means both you're increasing the number of sales and you're also increasing how much those sales are actually bringing in. So in other words, you're upselling as much as you can. Now, it is important to notice that every organization in its heart is a business. So I said a few moments ago, what's the purpose of any business? Is to make money. A university is a business, a nonprofit is a business, your jogging club, in a certain respect, is a business too. Why is that? Because every one of those organizations has customers. Let's take a university, for example. A university has customers. Who are those customers? It's the students, right? They're the ones who are paying the money, or they're the ones who are actually ensuring that money gets to the organization, which is the university. What is the product of the university? Product is simply the diploma, right? And the diploma comes with the education and the research and everything else that comes with the education. And if I was working for a university, my job as an employee at the university would be to ensure that this university continues to make money by solving problems in new ways, maybe by creating new degree programs, creating new other opportunities for students to become more engaged, maybe increasing or improving the quality of education or classes or research opportunities that I'm providing, cutting costs, so seeing what I can do to cut away any fat that's associated with the university, and then increasing sales, increasing the number of customers, increasing the number of students in my program. So every organization at its heart, even the nonprofits, is a business, which again gives you that competitive advantage because you're already operating, even if you work for a nonprofit or you're involved with your jogging club or your D&D club, because I know there's a few nerds out there, as am I, you are still operating in a certain respect like a business. So you have that experience already, which is very exciting. Okay, so entrepreneurship, when we think about entrepreneurship as opposed to just business creation or business development, when we talk about entrepreneurship, we think of it in terms of a way of thinking, reasoning, and acting that is opportunity-obsessed, holistic in approach, and leadership balance. And this comes from Timmins' New Venture Creation, another great resource for you. So what do I mean by this opportunity-obsessed? That you're constantly looking for different ways to improve the services or the products that you are providing your customers. And you're looking for ways that you can solve your problems better. So those are opportunities. You're also looking for opportunities to increase customers. You're looking for opportunities to reach new markets. So it's opportunity-obsessed, not just about the specific product or service that your organization is providing, but it's opportunity-obsessed associated with anything that can propel your career and your organization forward. Holistic in approach, that you see the 360-degree view, but you also are very granulistic in your problem solving. So you're able to see the little details, and like I said earlier, I know that you can solve problems on multi-dimensions, and you see decision trees and things like that, and that's part of being holistic in approach. And the leadership balance simply means that you and your team have complementary skills. In other words, that your skills on your team complement the other people that you are working with as well, and that together as a unit, as a holistic unit, you are all working to move the organization, the venture, forward. So an opportunity is attractive, it's durable, it's timely. Timely is a big thing, right? I mean, think about the first PDAs that came out, I think, in the early 90s. What was that wonderful innovation that Apple had, the Apple Newton, that was a PDA? And where did that go? Did they conquer the universe with that wonderful piece of technology? No, it wasn't timely. But of course, when the iPod came out, and I'm going to get into that as a great example in just a few moments, when that came out, that was very timely and that worked very well. So the opportunity is very much time sensitive in terms of when you're pursuing it, if you're looking to form a company or if you're looking to expand your products or service. And the opportunity in terms of entrepreneurship has to be anchored in a product or service. Why is that? Because you have to be able to sell something. So again, it goes back to that idea that nothing happens until something is sold, and then if nothing's being sold, it's a hobby or art. And in this case, this opportunity, if you are pursuing an entrepreneurial career or an entrepreneurial venture that you yourself would like to create, has to be anchored in a product or service that somebody or some other organization will buy, will actually spend money for. So that means that you have to be providing value to the buyer or the end user. And sometimes the buyer and the end user are separate, and I'm going to give some examples of that later. And the final element of entrepreneurship is that it is sustainable. In other words, it's not just a one-time deal. It's not just something that you can sell today and then you won't be able to sell it tomorrow, or you sell it once and then you'll never be able to sell it again. It has to be something that you constantly are able to propel the organization forward with. So now let's talk a little bit about the necessary transition from engineer to entrepreneur. And, I used to give these slides on the very first day of the class that I taught on entrepreneurship for scientists and engineers. These were the slides that I gave because I wanted the scientists and the engineers in the audience to understand where the business person is coming from and where you're coming from when you're approaching the business problem. So first of all, of course, you already know this about yourself. Engineering is your life. You love it. It is chocolate for your brain. You wouldn't have chosen the hardest thing on the planet to study, engineering. You wouldn't have chosen that to study and to build a life around if you didn't love it, if it didn't provide you with bliss. Maybe not every day, maybe not every moment, but it certainly provides you with bliss enough that you've continued to pursue it. And I always like to say, there's the joke, what's the difference between, you can insert any scientist or any engineer into this joke, but what's the difference between an introverted and an extroverted physicist, for example? And of course, you know the answer. The introverted physicist looks at his shoes. The extroverted physicist looks at your shoes while he's speaking. And I know you're laughing hysterically right now, and I'll give you a few moments to digest and not splurt up your milk that you're drinking, because that is a hilarious joke. But my point is that is how the business people, because you're going to be teaming up with business people if you form your own venture, this is how the business people view the engineers. This is how they view the technologists, the scientists that are involved in the tech entrepreneurial venture. They view you as being an introverted engineer, and we want them to know that there's more to you, that there's a lot more to you. So, of course, they see you, and you know this about yourself, as being highly intelligent. They see you as being devoted to the fundamental science, technology, engineering, and that you're always thinking about your science, technology, engineering, math problem. In other words, your problem solving is science or technology driven. This is mostly the case, you see this mostly the case in academia. Because, of course, those of you that work in industry, the problem solving is engineering driven, it is science driven, but fundamentally it is driven by the customer, no matter what company you're working for. You're self-motivated, and like I said earlier, for scientists and engineering researchers, in some cases, you're very patient. This is, again, in academia. You might take years and years to solve a problem. But, of course, that's not how it can be in business. It has to move a lot faster than that. The engineer is inquisitive. You are open-minded about the way things work. You don't accept things the way they are. You are logical. My degrees are in math and anthropology, and I studied physics for many years too, and I am such a logical decision maker. I actually think in terms of bifurcation diagrams. Those decision trees, I actually visualize that in my mind whenever I have to make a business decision, and that's really helped me. And I know you have similar type of experiences and thought processes as well. And your measurement of success could be inwardly driven. In other words, you're excited about the science or the technology or the engineering innovation that you've come up with, or it could be outwardly driven, which is more what the business person is expecting for themselves. Now, the entrepreneur is all about show me the money, okay? That's what they're about. That's a business person on the entrepreneurial team is all about show me the money. Now, they are also, just like you, highly intelligent. But their focus is on solving problems, increasing sales, cutting costs, and beating the competition to make sure that the company is always moving forward. They're always thinking about the vision of the business. The problem solving is market-driven exclusively. They're not going to waste years if they know that in the end they may get something out of it. There may be a product that could be built out of this technology. They're not going to waste years for that. They will if they know in 10 years, like, for example, with pharmaceutical products, if I know that this drug, I'm going to put in $1 billion and a half into this drug, maybe 10 years of research, but I know that my return on this particular drug for this particular disease is going to get me tenfold, 100-fold in terms of my investment, both in money and in time, and in human capital as well. So that's the kind of thing they're thinking about. They're thinking about market-driven problem solving. Their measure of success, therefore, is totally outwardly driven. So unlike the scientists in particular, and some engineers as well, where the measurement of success is the inwardly driven measurement of success, that I'm happy, I'm doing exciting engineering work, I'm solving these really interesting problems. For the entrepreneur, it's always, did I sell more? Did I cut costs? Did I beat the competition? Did I increase sales? They have a global view of the business venture in that they see the business in terms of all aspects, the team, the finances, the management, the organization, the distribution, the supply chain, the market, the risk, and so on and so forth. And their goal is to find the right alternative to meet the market need, make a profit, and then move on. So whereas particularly scientists in academia want to stay on a problem for years and years and years, and funny that we're doing this talk today on the day of the announcement of the Nobel Prize in Physics, which was given to Higgs and the other guy, and that's my joke there, and Higgs came up with his theory of the Higgs boson particle in 1964. So we're talking about a situation where over almost 40 years, well, I have to think back how old I am, so we're talking about 50 years ago almost, that this person came up with this idea, and he's waited for his Nobel Prize and rightly deserved it and got it today. But we don't have that kind of time as engineers and as entrepreneurs. And I just wanted you to sort of see this visual of the problem solving, the vision of problem solving, that how it moves from the scientist to the engineer, to the inventor, all the way through to the business person. And, you know, at the bottom of that slide there, you see that the problem solving is science-based. It is about knowledge generation. Of course, when we move to the engineering level, it becomes a little bit more broad. But as we move up the ladder there, the problem solving becomes all about marketing and profit generation. So it moves from knowledge generation to profit generation. And that's one of the really key points that I wanted to make today, is you have to be thinking in terms of profit generation. So key points for engineers to remember: forget about STEM, forget about science, technology, engineering, and math for the beauty of it. Again, it is chocolate for your brain, but you have to, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, think about profit. So you have to forget about the elegance of the code and think about what can this code be translated into or transferred into that somebody will actually buy. So the engineering and the scientific knowledge is the endeavor. It's a means to an end. It serves as the foundation of an innovation that brings a solution to a problem that people will pay for. Okay, so again, I'm going to say this again because I love saying this because it's really important and has a fun rhythm to it. Science and engineering serves as the foundation of an innovation that brings a solution to a problem that people will pay for. Okay, you got it. Understand the customer is king. We've talked about this already. Without the customer, all of your technological innovations, all of your solutions to your problems would never see the light of day. And so the business leader, the entrepreneur, gets these customers to make sure that we can continue these innovations and that ultimately continue selling. And like I said, every organization is a business, and marketing is everything because we have to keep track of and keep collaborating with and keep recruiting new customers. Let's talk a little bit about innovation and the entrepreneurial venture. And by the way, as Teresa said earlier, if you have any questions, just write them down in the console. We'll be able to answer them. And even if I'm not able to answer them today, you can email me and I can follow up with you later. So innovation thoughts. In general, entrepreneurial ventures need two types of innovation. And by the way, I should clarify what I mean by an entrepreneurial venture. I mean, there's hot dog stands, which don't require much technology at all. I mean, there's technology there, but there's no technology innovation that is required to run a hot dog stand, unless you're roasting the hot dog a different way, or maybe you're creating meat in a different way in the back of the stand. But in general, today I'm only focusing on innovation, on entrepreneurial ventures that are tech-based. Although many of the rules, many of the concepts that we're talking about today are absolutely compatible with non-tech ventures. Today I wanted to focus on tech ventures because I assumed that as engineering gods and goddesses, that is where you would prefer to maintain your time. So the entrepreneurial venture, the tech entrepreneurial venture, typically needs two types of innovation. It needs technological innovation, which serves as the basis of the product or the service or the way to build the product or service or the way to get the product or service to the customer, okay, which is then, of course, related to the business innovation, which ensures so successful delivery of the value to the customer. And I'm going to give you an example right now. So years ago, in 2004, was the first year that I started teaching this course at the University of Arizona to graduate students. And in January of that year, I was sitting on an airplane just before the semester was beginning, reading Fast Company magazine. And on the cover of Fast Company magazine was Steve Jobs, and there was this great article that's quoted there that said, the title of the article was, "If He's So Smart, ... Steve Jobs, Apple, and the Limits of Innovation." Now, at this point, we're talking about 2004, the iPod had already been invented, iTunes had already been invented. But this author was trying to gather what we can learn about innovation from Steve Jobs. And after reading that article, I thought it was so good, I used it as required reading for my students for 5 years after that. And even today, it's almost 10 years later, the guy is dead, and it's still completely valuable. So take a look for this article because it's a great one. But these are the basic concepts that were discussed in this article, that first of all, not all innovation is equal. Technological innovation will earn you lots of adoring fans, okay? Think Apple pre-iPod, right? Before the iPod, everybody thought Apple was beautiful, it was pretty, the machine looked nice, it had a good model in terms of how we actually could program on it, but it wasn't earning a lot of money, and the company itself, as you know, the storied history of Apple, had a lot of trouble. There are a lot of leadership changes and things like that, and at one point, as you know, Steve Jobs was fired from the company. Business model innovation will earn you lots of money. So now we think Apple post-iPod. What did they do? And this goes back to the idea of being sustainable in your entrepreneurial innovation, in your entrepreneurial idea, okay? Apple not only figured out that they could sell a machine, the iPod, but they realized that they could create a new way of selling music and later on videos and other types of media to the public one at a time, and it would be continuous because people would constantly want to sell their music. They saw that. They had that vision. That is a sustainable business model, and it was a business model innovation that earned them lots of money. And because they were the first to market, I think at least the biggest first to market, they certainly got a lot of the market share. We want to innovate for cash, not cachet. So if your cool new thing doesn't generate enough money to cover the cost and make a profit, it is an innovation, it's art, as we've talked about. Don't hoard your goodies. This is another one of these things that Steve Jobs taught us. Getting to market on time and at the right price is vital. And that usually means getting to market first, if you can, because the first to market usually is the one who sets the barriers to market for the other competitors. So you want to be first to market if you possibly can. This means that if you have to license your idea to an outside manufacturer or marketer, if you have to engage another company, if you have to somehow bring in a different team or bring in a team and think about getting this innovation, getting this solution, this customer-based solution, product, service out to market in a certain way, you do it because you want to be first to market and you want to get it out there as quickly as you can as long as it is ready to go and of course, the ecosystem in which you're selling it would be interested in this. I think one of the challenges that Apple had in the 90s with the Newton, with that PDA, was that they just didn't do enough market research, or at least they didn't do smart market research to understand what kind of people would buy a Newton and what else could they do with the Newton besides just at that time, like taking notes and stuff that would go nowhere. So I think that was a big marketing problem that they had. It wasn't so much the technology, but it was a marketing problem, and it was also a marketing problem that they did not solve well in the ecosystem of the 90s, in the sense that in the 90s, this was not the time to do this. This was not the time when people would be excited about that. They should have known that. But they came back later with the iPod, so they had the last laugh. Innovation does not generate growth. Management does. This is a huge point that I want to make here. When I work and when my students and my ex-students who are now successful entrepreneurs work with venture capitalists, work with angels, work with people who are high net worth individuals who are giving money, or I should say investing money, into organizations, into entrepreneurial endeavors. It's not so much that they're investing in the idea. The idea has to be fabulous. There's no doubt about that. You can't, I would never invest in an idea that was junky or stupid or, to me was not sustainable, not opportunity obsessed, all those things that we talked about earlier. The idea is important. But what's more important is the team, especially the management team, and what they can do with that idea. And, venture capitalists will often give serial entrepreneurs who have started and multiple companies and even failed at a few of those companies. They will often give serial entrepreneurs money for their investments for their entrepreneurial ventures versus somebody who's never done it before. Because in other words, failure is a good thing in entrepreneurship. If you have failed previously and you're coming to me to seek $20 million in investment capital, and I know that you failed doing X and Y in a previous enterprise, I have learned, because I do my due diligence, that you have gained information as to make sure you don't do X and Y again. You have now failed on somebody else's time and somebody else's dime, which means that you are an asset to me. You would be a good investment to me. And it's you that I'm investing in. I'm investing in you, the engineering god or goddess, the entrepreneurial god or goddess in this case, okay? So think this through. Be very clear that when you are thinking about an entrepreneurial endeavor, people want to see who is the management, they want to see who is the person who came up with the idea, who are the people who are going to bring this idea, this product, this service to fruition, and they invest in people, not products. They're investing in you, not your idea, because it's the people that bring the idea to fruition. Without the people, without the talent, you would have nothing. So just be aware of that. Your talent as an engineer, your expertise as a leader, as a manager, is what's going to get you investment capital, and it's also what's going to get you new opportunities in entrepreneurial ventures and also in intrapreneurial ventures. And by the way, it occurred to me that you might not know what I mean by intrapreneurial ventures. Entrepreneurial means a new type of company, a new type of venture. When I say that you can behave intrapreneurial within your own organization, I just mean that you can behave innovatively and you could perhaps even start your own sort of enterprise within the confines of the organization that you're already in. And I can talk to you more about that offline if you have questions about it. The last piece from this wonderful article about Steve Jobs and innovation was his point, the author's point, was that attention deficit has no place here, that every innovation worth doing deserves your commitment. Don't leap from one thing to another. If your creation doesn't appear important to you, it won't be important to anyone else. And that, of course, makes sense for our engineering careers, right? Because if we don't value our expertise, our experience, our credentials, our skills, and so on and so forth, if we don't value ourselves first, then nobody else is going to value it. And the same thing goes for your entrepreneurial vision, for your entrepreneurial venture. So, a successful business. It has a vision. What do you see for your business? It solves a societal market problem. That's the innovation. It has a brand. A brand is simply a promise of value. A promise of value. That's what a brand is. When you hear Coca-Cola, when you hear SWE, that is a brand, okay? The brand of SWE promises to deliver excellence, dependability, and expertise for its customers, which are its members and the community of women engineers. That's a promise of value. And your organization, your company, your entrepreneurial venture has to have a brand as well. And you, as the leader of that entrepreneurial venture, have to be able to know what that brand is. You have to be able to verbalize it. You have to have a plan to fulfill that vision and to deliver the value to customers who will pay. And of course, we hear this a lot in engineering, right? We have to have a talented team to work with who understands the value and with whom we can propel the organization forward. So we talk about plans. All you need is plans. So there's lots of plans associated with building a company. There's the early stage business plan. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. There's a marketing plan that you would need to develop. There's a financing plan. And finally, and sort of incorporated, the three of these things actually become incorporated into the business plan for commercialization. So the business plan for commercialization actually serves as a summation of those other three plans, but they can also be individual as well. Let me talk to you a little bit about the early stage business plan, because this is something you can start thinking about right now. And since you'll have these slides at your behest, you'll be able to follow these questions as you come up with ideas. If you think that this could be something that would be worth doing, worth your time, would be able to be sold to a customer, or as I should say, to multiple customers over a long period of time, then you can use this as a way to start thinking about what your business plan can be. So we look at the goals of the early stage business plan, since it's the precursor to the main business plan, the business plan for commercialization. So it's the first step, right? We need to we use this early stage business plan. One of the goals is we use it to gain knowledge of the steps needed to develop the viable technology from an innovation. So it goes back to that earlier slide about the problem solving and the difference between the problem solving between an engineer and a scientist and a technologist and an inventor and somebody in the business world, a business person or a marketing leader. So, but at this point, if you're going to start your own company, you need to know if you have an idea for an innovation. Let's say it's a new type of, cell phone battery charger. You need to know, is there technological expertise that you need to apply, or are there steps that you need to do in research that will take this innovation and develop it into a viable technology that can actually be built into a product that somebody would buy. So you also will use the early stage business plan as a way to gain experience in conducting early stage market research, because that's going to be very important. You need to know who's buying, what they buy, how they buy, who's the end user, who's the customer. I'm going to come back to that in a bit. This is very important. And it also helps you, the early stage business plan also helps you to formalize the near-term conceptual planning and the next steps that you need to move from where the innovation is today to actually launching the company, or if you're going to just sell the product to a company or sell the technology to a company, getting that technology out into the marketplace, into a product that is based upon that innovation. So the elements of the entrepreneurial venture, which also serve as the elements of the early stage business plan and ultimately the business plan for commercialization, are in front of you. So first of all, I need to know, if you're presenting me, let's say I'm a venture capitalist, Alaina G. Levine, venture capitalist extraordinaire. You're coming to me with your cell phone charger idea, okay? I need to know, number one, what is the problem you're addressing? Tell me what the problem is. What is going on? Why is it that I need that the world and me and the market that you're envisioning, why do they need a new type of cell phone charger? Okay? Tell me about the solution you propose. What's the innovation? How is it different than anything that's on the market or anything that could be on the market? Is the battery last longer? Is it maybe solar powered and battery powered? Is it powered by something completely foreign that nobody's ever thought of doing before? Is it made out of a certain type of material that makes it more rugged? Can you use it anywhere in the world? Can you use it with any model? Tell me what the solution is. What is the innovation that you've come up with? Then I need to know, as the venture capitalist, as the person who's going to invest in your firm, what is the market? Who cares? How and why and who buys? Let's talk about for a moment the difference between the end user and the customer, who sometimes may be different. And the best example of that is the world of the pharmaceuticals, the world of pharmaceuticals, right? Okay? Because I don't buy a drug necessarily directly from Bristol-Myers Squibb, right? I don't go and call Bristol-Myers Squibb or go onto bristolmyersquibb.com and type in that I want to buy some Viagra for whatever reason and buy it directly from Bristol-Myers Squibb. I generally do not do that, right? And most individuals, although in certain cases that is changing, but for historical purposes, we're talking about history, most cases you don't buy, as the person who's going to use the Viagra for some reason, don't buy the Viagra directly from Bristol-Myers Squibb. Who do I buy the Viagra from? I buy the Viagra from my pharmacy, right? Okay, so then, but who's paying for the Viagra, right? I have health insurance. So the health insurance is actually the customer, right? My health insurance company is the customer. Since they're going to be buying the Viagra, they're going to be paying for the Viagra. They are the customer. I am the end user. So there is a difference here in the pharmaceutical arena between the customer and the end user, and it is extremely important for you to know in the market in which you plan to launch your company or launch your entrepreneurial venture what type of market it is. Is there a difference between the end user and the company? Are they the same? Do they sometimes differ and sometimes remain the same? That could be different. Every industry is different. And, of course, the Internet has changed the way we buy in so many different sectors and spaces. So more and more we're going to see, I think, direct buy by consumers, by end users, in what was once spaces that were only occupied by organizations that were dealing with customers and end users that were separate. So that's important for you to know. What is the market? Who buys? Who cares? How will they buy it? You need to do a risk analysis. Why is this business risky? Is this innovation risky? You need to do an analysis of how much risk is involved, both monetary risk, financial risk, time risk, even with human capital. The business model is I think, in my opinion, there are two most important pieces of the entrepreneurial adventure that you need to think about. One of them is the business model. In other words, how are we actually going to make money? And I remember I had students, particularly in the early years, who were confused about that. They had ideas for new pharmaceuticals, new widgets, new things that they could create. They knew they could actually build a business around it, but they couldn't figure out how they would actually get it to the consumer or to the end user. In other words, they didn't have a business model as to how they would actually make money. And so in an entrepreneurial venture and in the related business plan, you absolutely have to define what the business model is. How are you going to make money, right? If you have a free website that's all about engineering jokes, and if you do, come see me afterwards because I'd be really interested in investing in that. But if you have a free website and you're trying to make money, what is the business model? How are you going to make money? This needs to be known. So that's there's two, like I said, two most important parts of the entrepreneurial venture. The business model is one of them. I'm going to get to the second one in just a moment. So you also need to understand, as you're building your plan, as you're thinking about your vision, what are the technical needs, the technological needs that you have to have to commercialize. So in other words, are there technological hurdles that need to be met or need to be jumped over before you can actually start selling or before you can actually start manufacturing? So you need to know what the technological needs are. You need to understand and have a handle on your intellectual property. In other words, are you saving this for patents? Is it a patent issue? Is it a trade secret issue? I'm going to get into more detail about that in a moment. You have to have a financial model, how you're planning on making the money, which is very similar to the business model, where you're planning on getting the money from, the investors, how you're going to do it, how you're going to split it. If you're investing, as you probably see the show Shark Tank, you should watch that show. It's a very good show. It gives you a little bit of insight into the entrepreneurial mindset, particularly of an investor. You see that show and they talk about, okay, I'm willing to give up, 2 board seats in exchange for $10 million in capital, or I'm willing to give up 20% of my company in exchange for $10 million in capital. So this is something that you need to know as well, and you need to think about very carefully, and you need to incorporate into your business plan. Operations. I need to know, as the investor, I need to know how are you going to manufacture this, and more importantly, how are you going to distribute it? And this is, in my opinion, the distribution model is probably the second most important element of the business plan and ultimately of the entrepreneurial venture. Why is the distribution model so important? Think about this. You are a customer. You want to buy my widget. If I don't have a way to get it to you that will get it to you quickly, that will get it to you safely, in other words, it won't fall apart, that will get it to you on time, if I don't have a way to distribute it to you, the whole system falls apart. And we've seen examples of that, and you can lose the whole company, in fact, if that happens. We've seen examples of that from the Oprah show, right? Every time Oprah would mention her favorite things on the Oprah show, she said, I love this cake made by Elena's Bakery in Tucson, Arizona. She would say that on the My Favorite Things episode of the Oprah show every December, like she had the show where she talked about all of her favorite things. And, companies would beg, plead, and barter, and they'd kill their firstborn child just to have their product mentioned on the Oprah show. So let's say I was able to get my cakes that I bake on the Oprah show, on her Favorite Things show. And Oprah says, I love Elena's cakes from Elena's Bakery in Tucson, Arizona. And I'm not ready for that. I have not put up any means or increased capacity in any way to make sure that I have enough cakes and delivery methods to get those cakes to customers, which is a bad thing that I did. Because once she mentions my name on her show, and once she mentions how great my fabulous cakes are on her show, I get just inundated with phone calls and emails and orders on my website. And now I'm screwed, because I have made no preparation to make sure that I'm able to deliver that, to distribute that to my customer. And as a result, the brand becomes synonymous with non-delivery, with non-value, and that's the last thing you want to ever have. So the distribution model and being able to have up the capacity so that you can make sure that your product is being delivered to the audience, to the consumer, is absolutely vital. And I think it sometimes gets hidden and tucked away into a business plan. It's sort of like a side thing. But you, being an engineering god and goddess, know that it has to be up there. Very, very important. I remember years ago, I moved from one house to another house. Literally, they were a mile apart. And I was getting the Wall Street Journal as a subscription from house number 1. And I called them up and I said, can you just move my subscription to house number 2? And they said, sure. And, long story short, 25 phone calls, 10 big mistakes where they kept delivering it to the old house, then they delivered the wrong paper to the new house, then they went back to delivering it to the old house. It was almost as if the Marx Brothers were delivering my Wall Street Journal. I was never able to get it, and I got it so frustrated that I actually ended up having to cancel my subscription to the Wall Street Journal simply because they couldn't distribute it to me, the customer. All I wanted to do was pay for the Wall Street Journal and get it delivered so I could read it. This was pre-tablet days, of course, and I couldn't even do that. They screwed up. They were using a third-party vendor in a part of Arizona where I was located, and that vendor was not reliable in terms of distribution, and as a result, they lost the customer, and they lost other customers because I then went and told people, look what the Wall Street Journal did, this company sucks, blah, 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 and that, helped to extend their brand, the negative brand and reputation of the company. So, not that I'm powerful, but you know what I'm talking about. So don't underestimate the value of having a strong distribution system and being able to communicate what your distribution system is going to be for your company. So the other element, the last two elements of your business plan are going to incorporate your company organization. In other words, how is it going to be organized via departments, via the leadership, via the management, who's going to be involved, and your exit strategy. What do I mean by an exit strategy? Well, before I tell you that, let me just say that I have a lot of slides here, as you can see, where I actually dissect each one of those sections and go through the details of what you should be asking yourself as you put together a business plan. Now, of course, we only have an hour today. We're almost done. I intentionally left this in here for you to use for yourself. So I'm not going to go into all this detail today because this is stuff that you can use on your own, study it on your own, and if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them for you. But I just wanted to give you an overview. This is Tech Entrepreneurship 101, not 201. I wanted to give you an overview, but you have the resources available. But the last part of the entrepreneurial venture that I wanted to discuss in detail is the exit strategy, because any investor wants to know how they are going to be rewarded. How are they going to get their return on their investment? When are they going to get it? How much do they expect to get? And what is the form that it's going to take? So you need to be able to tell them what will be your milestones and schedule for actually building your company and getting the customers and building the product to get it out to the customers. Will you sell it? And then ultimately, what is your exit strategy so that I, Alaina G. Levine, venture capitalist extraordinaire, will get my money back? Are you planning to sell the intellectual property to another company? Are you planning to license it? Are you going to sell the company outright? Are you thinking of, I'm going to just build this biotechnology widget and then I'm going to sell the company. My goal is to sell the company to Merck or to Bristol Myers Squibb. These are the things that you want to be researching. These are the things you want to be thinking about. Every investor wants to know when and how they're going to get their money back. It's not enough to say that, it's not enough to say that if this is going to be a great selling widget and you're going to get your money back. I need to know when I'm going to be getting my money back. And I know this kind of sounds like it goes against the idea of being sustainable, but it doesn't. And in fact, let me explain what I mean. You will have an exit strategy. In other words, an exit strategy for the investor. Okay, you can still keep the company going. That's not an issue. But I still need to know how as an investor I'm going to get my money back. So it's not necessarily about the sustainability of the company. It's more about how I'm actually going to get my money back. It's really as simple as that. So here are some resources for you. These are some books that I have drawn from. I use them in my coursework. And, of course, you have the slides here at your disposal to take a look at. But let me end, and then I'll take some questions if people have some questions. Let me just say that, you've got it, babe, okay? You got it all, okay? You got the talent. You got the drive. You got the experience. You got the mindset. You have all of the preconditions, the pre-existing conditions required to be a successful entrepreneur. So, and you did it because you pursued engineering. Because you dwell in the world of engineering, you naturally, innately develop these skills and expertise. So you are able to transfer them, to apply them to an entrepreneurial community and to an entrepreneurial venture. And I say, if you have an idea, go for it. Just do your research, okay? So make sure that you see that your invention or that your company or whatever it is that you want to build, your venture, has both a technical innovation and, if possible, a business innovation, because that's what's needed for a successful business. Know your market. Know who's going to buy, how they're going to buy, when they're going to buy, if they're going to stop buying. If they're going to stop buying after the first thing, or they're going to need you for a long, long period of time. You have to sell something, as we've talked about today. And, it's not surprising for me to tell you that entrepreneurship will take more time, more energy, and possibly more money than you originally thought. You're going to work harder than ever, but that's okay. And see, I think that again gives the engineer the advantage, because you guys can handle working 3 days straight. You guys can handle working on a problem with a team, with a multicultural, multinational team of people from different educational backgrounds. You can handle that, and you're successful in that too. So I think you really can absolutely do this. You can handle the work that's hard, and you can handle the risk, and you can handle certainly the reward. And it's okay to fail. What I told you before about how venture capitalists invest in serial entrepreneurs who have failed before is the truth. It is a fact. So I'm not saying go out and try and fail. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying if you do fail, do a very, very specific analysis, a retrospective, an introspective of why you failed. What were the elements that contributed to the failure? What could you have done differently, or what were the contributing factors that could have been altered that would have ensured that you did not fail? If you do that analysis and you're able to tell me when you're coming to me for investment capital why you failed and how you're not going to fail on my time and dime, that's going to give you a competitive advantage. So I say just go for it. You can do it. I'm excited for you. This is fabulous. So I want to thank you so much. This is, again, a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to work with SWE. That's an entrepreneurial venture in and of itself. They're always thinking innovatively. Please connect with me. Follow me on Facebook. Send me an email. My email is just Elena@ElenaLevine.com, but you can find that all over the Internet. Follow me on Twitter. Join me in my group on LinkedIn, which is specifically for career information for scientists and engineers. And if you email me or send me your email address, I'll send you a free resume template that you can use for entrepreneurial career opportunities, for engineering career opportunities, for anything that you, the engineering gods and goddesses of SWE, choose to pursue with your career. So thank you very much, and I'll take some questions now.
Excellent. Thank you very much. We do have some time for questions. Our first question we have for you, Elena, how do you locate an investor?
That's a great question, and I'm glad you asked that. How do you locate an investor? Well, what I would do is if you are interested, if you have an idea for a company or for a product or a service, I would start connecting with my local, in other words, my geographic region's entrepreneurial community. And you can quickly do a Google search for like Startup Oklahoma City or Startup Tucson or anything like that, or Entrepreneurship and Tucson, Entrepreneurship in Oklahoma City, or wherever you are in the world. And you will find that more and more metropolitan areas in particular have a very hardy, or trying to build a very hardy entrepreneurial community with entrepreneurs, with funders, with people who have done entrepreneurship, with people who teach entrepreneurship. So you want to be networking. The short answer to your question is you want to be networking, and you want to look for regionally based startup communities by doing Google search and joining these communities to see if you can start identifying investors. Another type of investor, which I very briefly mentioned but I didn't explain in this webinar, is an angel investor. And so I'm going to tell you what that is in a moment, but you could do a Google search for your region. Let's say you live in Tucson, and you could do a search for Tucson angel investors. And what you would find is that there is a Tucson angel investor group. Now, what's an angel? An angel is a high net worth individual who usually comes together in a regional basis in a club, usually called an angel club. So in Tucson, it's called the Desert Angels. And these high net worth individuals are often entrepreneurs themselves, or they have invested in entrepreneurial ventures in the past and present. They come together every month to network, to have dinner together, and then potential entrepreneurs who have an idea can come and present for these angel groups. And then the angels individually, once they see you speak at their meeting, can decide whether or not they want to work with you to invest individually or to invest as a group. So finding out where the angels are in your community, seeing if you can get on their mailing list, see if you can go to some of their networking events, and then also connecting with and networking with the entrepreneurship program if you have a local university. These are good nodes for networking that will be very useful for you for entrepreneurship. Great question. Thank you for asking it.
Thank you very much, Elena. That is all the time we do have for questions today. I would just like to remind everyone that today's webinar has been accredited with 0.1 CEUs, so everyone who has attended will receive a certificate of completion with directions on how to do so about that. Again, Elena, thank you very much for your presentation, and also a very big thank you to Ingersoll Rand for their generous support of today's webinar.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. And everyone, you'll now see a post-seminar survey on your screen. If you could just take a moment to fill that out, we appreciate any feedback you can provide us. It does help us better plan future programming. We greatly appreciate every piece of feedback that we can receive from you. And everyone who registered for today's program will be emailed links to the survey as well as a replay to the seminar. Thank you all very much for joining us. We hope you have a wonderful afternoon. We look forward to seeing you next time.